and welcome to a happy peppy Tuesday. It is Brain Balance Live. I am a fellow Brain Balance mom. I'm Jen, and I haven't been here in a while, and I've missed you so much, Heather.
I've missed you too. How have the rehearsals been going? Jen's been rehearsing for reopening of a lot of Disney shows.
That's right. We opened successfully. And, given just the time period that this is falling in, I've been sick for about a week here. But we opened the show successfully. It is currently running, and it's really, really awesome. If you make your way to Animal Kingdom, you should totally go check out the Nemo show. It is new and improved, and we're very excited to be back. Thanks for giving me the time to do that, Heather. I've missed our shows so much.
I have too, and I actually want to come and see your show. I'm not joking either. I've really been thinking about finding a time to come do that.
I would love that. You've said it on the live now, so officially people have heard it. So now you have to make good.
Yeah, I'm a woman of my word. So there we go.
I absolutely love that. And we are going to be moving forward as I'm navigating my new schedule. We're going to be chatting because I really do love these lives. And I feel like they're just such a huge part of not only my life, but Heather, all of your Brain Balance people and just your community there in Texas. So I'm really happy to be back and really looking forward to getting our schedule on in the next month or two.
Yes, I'm excited. And today's show, I think, applies to all of us probably on one level or another, because it's how to quiet the inner critic. And we can rewire the brain for greater self-acceptance, self-love. And that is what the show is about. And I will start by saying that having a negative internal dialogue from time to time is to be expected because we're human beings, but keeping a rein on it. And it's a matter of degrees also,
Yeah, it is wild how negative your head can get, because it feels like growing up, you're kind of always protecting yourself from things that are dangerous, and therefore you're holding yourself to like a high standard. It's something that protects us. It feels like as humans is to be overly critical sometimes,
Yeah, actually, that is part of what we're going to talk about, where some of this stuff comes from, and that protective thing. So let's go ahead and move on into the first slide. And to start with, any of us who work with kids or parents, we need to know that our words become our child's inner voice. And so we've done so many shows about unintentional shaming, emotional dysregulation, anger, how to handle various behaviors. And I am a broken record on saying we do not want to ascribe negative personality or character labels when that behavior is communication that I'm overwhelmed. I don't have the toolkit to handle this, or I don't feel that I do. So even we all have certain traits. And there is a positive and a negative to virtually any, if not all, traits. For example, stubborn can also be determined. So on the left-hand side is a positive way to frame a trait for your kids. It doesn't mean that we don't work on the negative aspect of it and train our kids on this. But think about this. If let's say that you take one of your kids to a birthday party, and maybe they kind of hold on to mama's leg or daddy's leg, and you say, he's so shy, he's so quiet, he's probably not going to engage with anyone. You may think that you're setting the expectation where they don't think the child is being rude. He hears that and says, I'm too scared to talk to people. And so that becomes how he sees himself. So too quiet also means good listener. So you can work on cultivating social skills and work on like conversation starter games are a great way to teach kids how to engage with others if they don't know, how do I get the ball rolling on this? I also recommend having a pen pal where you're writing questions and answers, and that gives them more time to think about what they want to say. And then that cultivates their confidence for face-to-face interactions. But a lot of our families have kids who struggle with impulse control. That also is spontaneity. These are not synonymous, okay? So when you're talking to your kids about, we want to work on hitting the brake pedal, and you're playing Simon Says, red light, green light, all those kinds of things, we got to pause, because this is when we are doing a conversation, we take turns. For example, if they're interrupting, But you know what I love about how you jump into things? You're also spontaneous. I wish I wish I was a little more like that. You're so willing to jump in and try something new. And sometimes I feel a little scared. I admire that in you. So, really.
That's such a beautiful way to put that. So often I feel like I fall into the trap of being like, taking it personally that I feel devalued when you interrupt me. Like, I feel like you don't care what I have to say because you interrupt me consistently. That is such a beautiful way to embrace the good side of that. That's so hard to do.
Yeah, it is difficult to do, but if you give yourself settling time and self-care and you pause and think about what is the best interpretation about why my child is doing this. We're not talking about a free pass. There is still training and instructing. And the other, unfortunately, sometimes part of the way we reprimand kids is because we're human beings and we might be judged by somebody else. They think we're a bad parent. And so they're a reflection of me. And that makes you human. There's nothing but being aware of that. And in the big scheme of things, like what can I let go and how can I, you know what? He has impulse control issues. It's not that he disrespects me, even though I feel that, and you are entitled to feel that. We're entitled to our feelings as adults, just like kids are. Stop being so like you're so. And I love how enthusiastic you are about this. But let's use our indoor voice. Let's turn the volume from 10 down to 6, and you can even play games and music and have it going to varying degrees to really make that more concrete for them. Rigid. Now, there is a thing of rigid thinking. I'm right, you're wrong. There's only one way to see this. But also, are they disciplined in ways? I mean, are there times where, seriously, you could take a day off from practicing this? Hey, that's discipline. And I wish they'd spend more time with the family right now. Also admire the good part of that, but talk about balance. Being picky versus selective just has a different connotation. Bossy, a leader. A lot of our kids I know the rules. I'm so good at them. I know how everyone should interpret them. And if it doesn't go my way, that's not okay. But guess what? They also use their voice, and they are likely to not give into peer pressure as readily. That's such a gift, but rein it in and talk about the positive ways to use that and also how to dial it back. And the whole dialing back, making it very concrete is so good. And talking about it as you're reading books together. We did a whole summer reading list book thing last week. Hyper is also energetic. How many of you sometimes look at your kids like, I'd give anything to have 10% of that energy? I'm tired.
Of your energy, and please ask me to take a nap. Please.
Right. Stubborn, persistent. That's also grit, perseverance, demanding, assertive. We did a show about knowing the difference between aggression and assertion. And assertion, and this is a very specific conversation we have to explicitly teach our kids. Aggression is when I'm looking out for me and not for you. Assertive is when I'm using my voice, I am setting and respecting boundaries, but I also care about how it impacts you. Creative, scattered. There are so many research studies about how some of the most creative people have the messiest offices. I don't know if that's entirely true because my office is always a little messy. It's not awful, but and I don't know that I fit the vast creativity they're talking about yet. Growth mindset. Dramatic, expressive. Instead of calling our kids a drama queen, king, there's something to be said for not having flat affect all the time, not being robotic. Embrace that. And what is a good outlet for that? Maybe acting, singing. I mean, there's artistic expression. Fearful, careful. There is a difference. We need caution. And sometimes kids who are impulsive are lacking caution. They don't stop and think about the danger or the consequence of something before they act. But if you also have kids who sort of seem paralyzed, they are thoughtful and careful. They don't just jump in. So that's sort of the opposite sometimes of the impulsivity. But just our words matter. And there is a positive to everything. And ask yourself, is my child doing this on purpose? Where is this coming from? And how do I teach them the positive side of it and how to rein it in? Okay, let's move on. There are some very identifiable ruts of thinking. I have a specific book recommendation for you in a couple of slides from now. And these are the 9 ruts of thinking that have been identified in research over and over for neurodiverse individuals. We all can have these, by the way, and trauma can lead to these. But we're going to talk about where the zooming in on the negative comes from. And Jen is so intelligent, she didn't even know she's doing a spoiler alert on how we're wired for protection and how that gives us a negativity bias. We will go into a deep dive on that. Mind reading. We are not nearly as good at knowing what people are thinking as we think they are. Everybody's going to, or even predicting, fortune telling, mind reading. Nobody likes me. They think I'm stupid. They think this about me. We don't know what they think. Fortune telling. When I do this presentation, everybody's going to be laughing at me. They're going to think I don't have good grammar and, talking it into just the most negative thing. I should do this. You should do that. We've talked about this on several shows about should is a shaming word. We're all going to use it sometimes. I don't know how it's possible to, and there might be certain times where it's fine, but sometimes I should have spent more time with my kids on their homework, or maybe they would have passed the class. Well, maybe there's a reason you didn't. Maybe you had another child who was sick. Maybe you were sick. Maybe you were overwhelmed at work. Should means it automatically implies I failed. I did something I shouldn't have, or I didn't do something I should have. And we can also externalize that. You should have helped me. You should have reminded me. You ever hear that from your kids?
Oh, I listen. Yes. And I do it to myself too.
Sure. Yes. I think that is one of the ones that is the most universal. But I've done, if you're interested in learning more about unintentional shaming, type in unintentional shaming on our video tab, because I did an entire show on that. All or nothing thinking. Everything's great. Everything's horrible. It's a switch, not a dial. It's catastrophizing is making a mountain out of a molehill. This is awful. It's the worst thing ever. Yeah. And likewise, sometimes kids also will be overly excited about something that, okay, that's contentment, but it's not turning cartwheel stuff, Yeah. But they might experience emotions on a 0 or a 10, and thoughts and emotions are so intertwined, and then they lead to the behavior. Blaming, and that can be internalized or externalized. It's not fair. I've done a whole It's Not Fair show that I highly recommend. There are neurodevelopmental struggles that lead to kids not having the perspective to understand things and to think things aren't fair, and not understanding the difference between sameness and fairness. I go into a whole deep dive on how to work through those things. I can't. I also did a show a couple of weeks on I can't, so I won't try, and how to overcome that. So these are the reason I wanted to share these with you is I highly recommend looking for patterns to what your kids say to you, to other family members, friends, or ways they behave that will identify a couple of the top patterns, and that makes it easier to break through those. So finding patterns makes it easier. When we get to the maladaptive thought, instead of focusing on the behavior, the thought preceded the behavior. That thought led to an emotion and so forth. You get to the underlying thought pattern, you are getting to more of the root of what's going on. And then why do they have that? Is it trauma? Is it that they lack cognitive flexibility because their brain's not communicating properly? So, all right, let's move on.
This is so hard for, especially my Roger has such a high level of intelligence, those negative ruts of thought, all of them. He goes so quickly that I can't even think through all the steps that it took him to get to that conclusion. But what he's saying always makes sense. I'm like, oh, I get what you're saying. It is horribly negative and but I can't even get ahead of him. He's so fast. I'm like, you're so intelligent about this that it's hard for me to even talk you down from it because my head is spinning,
Yes. I think like with Roger and a lot of our kids, and he is so hyper intelligent, sometimes some of these kids, because they are so intelligent, they think they're smarter than everyone else. And the way they see it is the only way to see it.
Yes.
And one of the,
you're right. I don't.
I didn't really have an answer for that. The physics of that is, yeah. So What's another way of thinking about this, or talking about your perspective and the difference between opinions and facts? And that is such a great thought. Thanks for sharing that with me. That really gives me something to ponder. I have a book for you at the end.
Okay.
That is perfect. Okay, why are we so wired for these negative ruts of thinking? Number one, first and foremost, is our words become their inner voice. We want to make sure we are not unintentionally shaming our kids, even though we're not doing it on purpose. But there are so many things that it's how it's perceived, not what the intent was. Trauma will do it. We are not born with shame. It comes as a result of neurodevelopmental struggles, trauma, a lot of negative comments. On average, ADHD, those diagnosed with ADHD have about a 1 positive to 15 negative comment ratio of what they receive. That impacts brain development. It absolutely is going to lead to these ruts of thinking. And then you pour on top of that, they're emotionally dysregulated. They may have rejection sensitivity. I did an entire show on that. And they may personalize comments that were not meant personally at all. They may lack the context for what somebody said. They may think something was directed at them and it wasn't. There are so many layers of critical thinking skills and this has nothing to do with intelligence. You can have super high intelligence and struggle with some of these CEO functions of the brain. But look at this I created this little cartoon to demonstrate this. Look at all the awesome stuff over here. Look at good. This brain is like, hey, check it out. Awesome day over here. And someone who is wired for negativity, there is one thing that was not ideal. This is the worst day. I knew it would be awful. I predicted it. Fortune telling, worst day, catastrophizing. I was looking for the bad and I found it. That is what confirmation bias is. Confirmation bias is we look for proof of what we already believe to be true. This is actually how a lot of conspiracies get started. And then you can find anything that supports that. But what about the things that don't? But you want to be proven right instead of having a broader perspective on it. So part of this is confirmation bias. I like this person, so every single thing they do, I think is absolutely wonderful. Kind of how I feel about Jen. But which I don't think that's really far from the truth anyway.
There's a lot of work that goes into trying to stay in that brain that's on the good side over here. I think you just like I work at it.
But negative memory bias, we all have it. It is going to be more pronounced in those with neurodevelopmental differences because they have been misunderstood. They have been labeled. They are having struggles often that they're hiding from you. They may be opting out because they don't want you to know they're struggling because you think they're smart. They are smart. But they think because they're struggling, that means they're not because they have such black and white thinking. Rejection, failure, shame, all of those give me this confirmation bias to look for the negative. People are going to reject me. That impacts how I behave. And then they're more likely to do so. Or they're not doing it. I think they are. There's also even sensory processing that comes in with misreading those things. Auditory processing, body awareness stuff. But one of the biggest things to keep in mind, I've talked about working memory before. We have this mental sketch pad where we hold a few pieces of information at a time. It can only hold 5 to 7 pieces of information. If we're doing math, we hold numbers in our head while we do the other part of the equation. When we're reading, we remember the previous sentence while we're reading the following sentence. When it comes to real life, I can only hold so many things in my head. The bigger my emotions are, it starts squeezing out. I have less room to hold things, to consider another perspective, to consider somebody else's feelings, to consider a different interpretation. All of these are reasons we have to get to the root cause of why these are the struggles. But negative memory bias and confirmation bias, if you feel like my kids are so negative, they're always down, they're always complaining. Number one, be sure you don't say that around them because then that is all or nothing thinking. Are they always complaining? If they hear you say that, we are giving them a reputation to live up to unintentionally.
It's wild too that whenever we're in those negative spirals, it is so much harder to dig ourselves out. And it does get to a place where what you're saying is true. This child is being always negative at this point because we've negative spiraled so far that that statement is actually true. And yet acknowledging that actually makes it worse.
And also, have something, you know what, we're going to hit the reset button. You know what, I said you were always being negative, and I wish I wouldn't have said that. And here's why. I think maybe I contributed to that. I'm, have them take responsibility. But when they see you taking responsibility for your part, like maybe as you're watching these shows, I'm like, wow, I've been using the shaming statement that I didn't know was shaming. Yeah. Big girls don't cry, whatever all the things that we've talked about are, I've learned some stuff and I'm working on it. I just want to hit a reset button. I'm sorry, buddy. I wish I wouldn't have said that.
Even just what you're saying now with like we can only hold so much in our heads. I'm like, well, right now when I've been in like this rehearsal process and I'm working so hard and then I got hit with a sickness, like it's just kind of, it all piles up and you can only handle so much. And so like, I feel like, yeah, I can probably admit like I have not been the best version of myself because I'm just overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And I can admit that. It's hard to admit that.
Right. But, everybody on earth, separate from working memory, everybody on earth has a certain cognitive capacity. This is how much load I can take at any given time. When we get up to here, that is the tipping point for kids who struggle with learning. I can't retain any more information, or I can't focus any longer. I'm up to here and blow up, slash out, defiance, or pulling back, withdrawal, shutting down. We're up to here. We can't take any more. And that is going to spiral these ruts of thinking. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So how do we get kids to focus more on what's good? It doesn't mean that we're denying. I don't think we have to teach them that bad things happen. They're pretty aware of that. So none of this is, I'm not saying be Pollyanna and don't talk about the negative. Everything's great. That's not real. Our kids need to be authentic. So, but they also need to get the magnifying glass away from that one thing that wasn't ideal and also see that there's good. Those things can co-occur. Just as we can have two opposing emotions, seemingly opposing emotions at the same time, grief when somebody dies, gratitude for what they have meant in our lives, that holds true across the board. There are so many, we can have a friend where I love this friend. I want the best for him. We have all these things in common. It's fun. Wow. Sometimes they kind of talk, they're kind of condescending to me. I feel worse about myself after I'm around them. You can have so many conflicts. And a lot of times kids think it's either this or it's this. So give specific, succinct praise for small things. We don't, not much less about the A+ and the MVP, more about effort, progress. You're seeing more patience. You're seeing perseverance. They remembered to hang up their coat when they walked in the door. They put their shoes in the mudroom where they belong. Little things. Yes, praise it. Because accidentally, we and other people are going to say negative things. We really need a 3 positive to 1 negative ratio to have mental health. And the negative, really, I'm talking about constructive, where you're training them. You want to sandwich the thing to work on between 2 positives, but look for small things. We know this, but then we're so busy, so overwhelmed. We're cooking dinner, doing laundry, working, have multiple kids, errands.
Oh, you feel like you have to correct if there's things that are wrong. You feel like it's my job to help correct, but what it means is that you end up always being critical and always correcting.
Yes, that's where this comes from usually, is that it is our job to train and instruct, and that's what I'm doing. But then we don't stop to think about, well, goodness, I've told him 100 times to put his shoes there. Of course he did it. Why am I going to think of? I could understand that thought. Like, are we going to throw a parade because I put my shoes where they go every day? But progress. They're working on it. They're making effort. That's what we've got to notice. Neural pathways form to build upon their strengths, and it also forms a better connection, emotional bond. That relationship grows stronger, and it lowers the negativity bias, because that I'm not confirming everything's negative. Wow, I'm starting to hear a lot more positive. We've got to get the ratio flipped around. Explain the subjectivity of criticism. So kids need to know that sometimes it's so cool. Your brain works differently. All of us are different. And that's awesome. That makes the world go round. You are so innovative. Man, you can build things with your Legos like I've never seen before. Point out things like that. And yeah, you learn to read differently. That's okay. Some people don't understand that. They don't understand like we do, how important it is to celebrate differences. And so they may say something because they don't get how cool it is to be unique. And also make sure they understand the difference between feedback versus criticism, and make sure we know the difference. Criticism is just correcting. Correction. Do this, don't do that. And feedback is for growth, where you're noting the progress. Let's check ourselves on that. But make sure they know that sometimes I am giving you feedback because I love you. You're going off to college, and I know you want to be independent, responsible. These are things that will help you get what you want. Show what's in it for them. But I'm giving you feedback to help you. I notice that you're doing this better. That's so great. What else can we do to work on XYZ? Slow down. Oh, this fast-paced world. Pause, slow down, relish special moments. I mean, it could be you're going for a walk. Oh, man, it's like 3 times lately, I'm taking the dogs for a walk, and there are, what are they called? Crawfish just marching down the road. What? Yes, down the middle of the concrete. And I'm really worried for them. I mean, but that's that's a cool experience. It's not something that happens all the time. I pause, I relish it. I watch them, I stand back so they're not scared. I mean, it could, butterflies, dragonflies. We have the most vibrant blue dragonflies, feeling the wind on your face, lots of sensory experience. But also, wow, my daughter's been kind of pushing me away. She just came up and gave me the warmest hug. Don't keep cooking dinner. Pause, close your eyes, just rest in that for a minute. It really does matter.
Doing that.
It's hard because it's rush, go, demand. We must pause. And we're also modeling pausing for our kids. If we're trying to teach them about impulse control, they have to see us pausing sometimes, understanding there are different speeds. Small personal victories. This isn't about beating someone else at something. It's about personal growth, setting smart goals and noticing the progress. And, good job, buddy. Look how much closer you are. It doesn't mean that they've arrived 100%. This gives the brain time to store the positive and long-term memory. Understand that when we're talking about that working memory, that mental sketch pad where I'm holding information, it has to rest there long enough to go to long-term storage. If not, it goes to the recycle bin. That's why pausing matters. It impacts the brain. And share daily highs and lows. You could do this at dinner. If you think every day's too much, start with once a week at your family meeting. Highs and lows. So we are not negating the fact that unfortunate things happen, things that we wish were different. But this teaches kids that ideal and not ideal things can happen in the same day. And so no one event defines the entire day. Circumstances do not define our mood. We have power over our perspective. The brain must know how to hold both of those things simultaneously. So many times kids, it's one or the other, and guess which one gets chosen? The negative.
I sometimes think that because my parents tried so much to always make my childhood like a good solid one, sometimes I don't know how to hold both. And that's why I have a negative bias a little bit, because I'm used to things going right. Like,
right.
Like, it's like I don't function when things don't go right because of the perfectionism and all that. We've discussed my issues.
A lot of people are feeling really sorry for you that you're used to things going right. Poor Jen.
I know. Seriously though, like sometimes my coping skills, I'm like, I'm not very good at coping, like in general. And my mental health suffers because of it. I actually struggle more with my mental health than say my husband, because I had a little more of a careful upbringing, Yeah. And that, I know that sounds like, oh, well, it's me, but
no,
like,
I was teasing you. It is true. No, it's absolutely true. And this goes to, and how sweet. I mean, your parents love you so much and they're protecting, and we want to protect our kids. We also want to grow their agency and let them know that they can handle uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
That all comes from love. We are growing independence and agency and resilience when we instead of fixing everything, let's brainstorm what's a way to tackle this. You know, that kind of thing. No, thank you for sharing that. That is such a great point. I was teasing you. I was
it's embarrassing, but it's true.
I'm used to things going right. No, but it's true. All of these things are like a muscle we have to grow. It's not like you start doing these things. And by the way, if you get sort of pushback when you're starting to try to cultivate some of these more positive leans on things, keep going. That negativity bias is ingrained, and it doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean it's permanent. If you give up because it doesn't go well the first few times, we're not getting anywhere. If you keep going, it will improve.
Yes.
Okay. That's from last week. I'm
going to guess our producer had to sign herself out for a second.
Okay. Yeah, that's from last week.
Hi, friends. So our producer had an issue that was an emergency family situation, and she had to run. So I am here, and I pulled up the wrong slides. So it's on me. It's on me. Listen, I'm gonna try to find the slides that are the correct slides.
Okay, and I'm going to keep talking while you do that.
You do it. That's technical difficulties, but we'll figure this out.
I was basically figuring out all of my issues now. So
it's all good.
We're going to be on for a while.
Y'all want any marital counseling while you're both on here? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Always.
No. Okay, so we have talked about the ruts of thinking. We have talked about the negativity bias. We have talked about how to start steering things to where we can start noticing the positive. These things actually rewire the brain. One of the things I have personally done this, most of us have gone through trauma in our lives. I'm no different. One of the things there's not many things in my life that I will say absolutely changed the trajectory of my life, like what I'm about to say to you. It is, and this is tedious at first, but whether it's for yourself or for your kids, carry around a notebook or a journal. And when you have a negative self-talk come up, I can't do it, nobody likes me, everything's off, whatever those things are, write them down and then counter it with what you intellectually know to be a more accurate version of what you're thinking. Okay. This works. What happens, you write it down, you're owning it. We have to own the shaming statements. It makes us more aware of what our thought patterns are. But then read that. Nobody likes me. Is that really true? Okay. So I'm going to just real quick, I'm going to send Corey the slides because he can't find them. Corey, if you're listening, I'm forwarding these to you.
A fun fact about me is I can't multitask. Corey would say, like, a lot of people can't multitask, and we all think we can, but we're not really very good at it. But reading his texts to you about sending the slides has made me completely forget what I was going to say.
Okay.
All right. I had something good to add to what she was saying. Now I'm reading.
So, let's say that somebody's saying, I will never be as good of an athlete as Jason. Number one, that's a comparison, which we're going to talk about when Corey pulls up the slides. But number two, I am, I'm awful at basketball. I am getting better because I'm not as good of an athlete as I want to be yet. The power of yet, knowing that we can grow. This is a growth mindset. We need to go backwards. Thanks, Corey. And also we're going to teach kids to go back a little bit more. Oh yeah, because I was just doing things out of order while I was waiting on the slides. Okay, forward. Let's just go to the next slide. We're going to counter them. I'll show you an example. But comparisons. Should my yardstick be that I'm not as good as Jason, or do I just want to be the best version of myself?
Oh,
right?
yes.
It's called the compare and despair trap. This has existed probably for all as long as the world's been spinning, but it is even worse. There is a ton of research about how much worse this is in the social media age. And one of the reasons is that so many people, there doesn't necessarily have to be any ill intent behind this, but who wants to get on social media and be like, I broke up with my boyfriend and, I gained 5 pounds or I failed my test, but it's like, I did this and this was fun and this was cool. And so sometimes our kids will look at that and think that that is the totality of someone's life. I mean, a bird pooped in my hair. Do I want to take a picture of that and put it on, or am I going to do it when I'm all looking spiffy, And so we really do want to talk to
like that now, though, Heather. The kids are being very honest on the social media more so than our generation. It's very funny to see.
No, they are, and sometimes that's true, but it still is steered. It still creates a narrative that someone wants it to create.
Yes,
it's not the same thing as the 24/7.
Yeah,
and so address the triggers of negative comparisons. Is it too much social media time? Help kids see which friends really have their best interest at heart. What is true friendship? We cannot tell them not to hang out with someone because they're going to want to see them more. We can, but it's better to talk through those things and help them kind of use their critical thinking to come to the conclusion that's best. But look for what those patterns are. Maybe what are they eating? What are their sleep patterns? What else has changed in their life? So it can be activities they're doing, people they're hanging out with, social media. It could also be, wow, they're really restless sleeping. Why is that? There's something going on there. Note when, where, why, and how things go well, and replicate that. Journaling this stuff makes it easier. You might think you're going to note those patterns. It's not the same as writing it down. Wow, this was such a positive day. What happened? Well, she hung out with Joelle, and maybe she's a positive influence. And we did this. We had a really restful day. She had settling time. Look for all the combinations of things. Wow, she's more uncomfortable in this scenario. What's that about? It gives you a talking point for a conversation. Offer praise for effort. I have to say that again. Provide opportunities for kids to develop their strengths. You know what? Maybe someone's not super athletic. Even though we can all grow skills, maybe they're more musically inclined. Help them find the things that they enjoy and that they have some natural inclination in, and then cultivate it. That when I have other islands of competency to hold on to, that we all have things that we're better at and not as good at. And when you normalize that, kids don't get so hung up on that stuff. Nurture self-acceptance, warts and all, and discuss the myth of perfection. Good enough is better than perfect. So, all right, let's move on. We're a little bit, and some more questions to outsmart unhelpful thoughts. Is this a fact or is it an automatic thought? Kids need to know, we need to explicitly tell them that thoughts are just that. They are fleeting things that go through our minds. Just because we think something doesn't make it a fact. How can I prove or disprove it? With an open mind, so we don't have confirmation bias. What is a more useful thought? What's a more useful way of thinking about this? What's another way of thinking about this? Cultivating that flexibility. What would I say to a friend? The way I'm talking to myself, if a friend said that to me about themselves, what would I say to them? Talk to yourself, treat yourself as you would a dear friend. What else accounts for the outcome? I'm not talking about having kids not take responsibility, but sometimes kids will beat themselves up if their team loses. And, we're talking about perfection and being too hard on themselves. Well, it was raining. So, we had some fumbles. Just come up with one of our starters was sick. Wait, it's not all on me. Most of the time, there are many combinations of factors that lead to a certain result. That is very important for kids to know. Does this matter in the big scheme of things? Or you can ask kids, will this matter tomorrow? Will it matter by Friday? Perspective. And here is a book that I recommend. It is on the top 5 at least, I would say, list of books I recommend so wholeheartedly. Conquer Negative Thinking for Teens. It is published by Free Spirit. So you can go to freespirit.com. Amazon has a lot of the same books, and they're usually cheaper. And that's the author. But what it is it gives you those 9 ruts of thinking, and you have kids read those. It kind of defines them, and they identify which ones apply to them. And then there are activities to help break that particular type of thinking pattern. It is phenomenal. I have used that with so many tweens and teens. And talk about a person who just a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That book is powerful. So you're reading, you're writing, you're so actively engaged in it, and you're helping rewire the brain in a huge, huge way.
I love this idea too of writing all this down. It's really like good to get it out of your head, I think.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And the other thing is when you're writing, your brain automatically slows down because your brain is going to go faster than your hand can. And so your thoughts slow down so that your hand and your thoughts are in line, and you already can start using logic with what that thought was. And your logic can that was an emotional thought, and then you counter it. Okay, and I have an example of that on the next slide. This is what I was talking about while we were waiting for the slides. So when you have a negative thought, I'll never be as good of an athlete as Jason. I'm a terrible basketball player. I'm not as good at basketball as I want to be yet. Not as good as Jason yet, as good as I want to be. We want to just grow ourselves, not be in competition with somebody else, except in an appropriate way. I am getting better with practice. No one wants to be my friend. They all think I'm weird. And well, that is mind reading, right? No one. That's all or nothing. I'm a terrible basketball player. That's catastrophizing, like worst ever, right? I'm not a mind reader. Lisa enjoys playing with me. And I like being unique because ... fill in the blank. Those are just examples. But what happens when you do this, I did not enjoy it. This was decades ago when I did this. It was tedious. I would have a negative thought about myself come up. I would write it down. I would counter it with what I knew to be true. And I'm not talking about a positive mantra. I countered it with something I could buy into. See, on the right, you're not saying, I'm the best basketball player. No, I'm getting better. I'm not where I want to be yet. I'm not saying everyone likes me. I'm saying Lisa enjoys playing with me, and I like being unique. So when we try to counteract negative self-talk with something super positive, a positive affirmation, kids' brains reject it. Our brains, adults' brains reject it if we don't believe it. We feel like somebody's lying to us or we're lying to ourselves. Replace the negative with a neutral, and then it gradually moves into more positive. Some of these things aren't even thoughts about myself. They are just facts that help negate the negative. Lisa likes playing with me. So no, it's not that no one wants to be my friend. Lisa does. I'm getting out of that all or nothing kinds of thinking. Okay. And finally, last slide. Here are some book recommendations. And Jen, the one I was talking about for you, The Gifted Teen. That one is so fantastic. It is for twice exceptional kids. So kids who might be diagnosed with ADHD or different kinds of learning differences, but then they also have massive talent, giftedness, strengths in other areas. Fighting invisible tigers, digital dragons. What do you really want? Go for it. Being me with OCD, even if your child is not diagnosed with OCD, this is from a teen's perspective, how they got rid of being so obsessive. And it's, of course, written in a way that will really resonate with tweens and teens. The courage to be yourself. So standing, not peer pressure, self-advocacy, dream up now, creative self-discovery, getting to know yourself, self-awareness. What do you stand for? This is a lot about cultivating character strengths. But digital dragons, it really is more of a kid-friendly way to rein that in and do that with moderation, all of the screen time. What do you really want is another one with kind of goal setting and self-awareness, fighting invisible tigers, stress management for teens. And it says teens, but I have used these with tweens and teens. But I wanted to give you, these are really fantastic. And what I love about these is there's reading, there's really engaging stories within their activities to really drive the point home and have if you want to work on, back to what we talked about last week, work on literacy and and social emotional, emotional intelligence. All these books will accomplish that too.
I absolutely love this. I'm totally taking this screenshot with me. You should have an Amazon link. I'm going to buy all of those.
Yeah, they're really great. So that's it.
I love it. Thank you so much for chatting with us about all of those negative self-talk solutions. Really, that's what Heather is here to do, is give us tools. And as you can see, these are all the numbers to her brain balance centers. If you are so lucky to be local, you should definitely check them out. Get your assessments today. They work with kids and adults. And is there anything else you want to share with everybody today?
Just that Dr. Brian and I will be back Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Thursday at 1 o'clock. All right. We will see you then. Thank you so much, Heather.
Oh, you know what? One other thing I'll say real quick is if I do a weekly newsletter with helpful tips. It's called Heather's Help Newsletter. It has tons of information, useful strategies, activities, research that's not reading research articles, but articles based on research, all evidence-based. But it has different topics each week. But you can simply message us on the page and we can get you added to that. It's just a complimentary way to serve families.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And I cannot wait to read the next one. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you. I hope you feel better. Everyone have a great week.
Thanks.